Welcome back, you guys. This is the Art School Graduate. I am your host, and today, let's just start it from the beginning. From designing iconic album covers like The Roots Tipping Point and shaping the look of film like the Blackkklansman, Star Wars, Bohemian Rhapsody. He is one of the most influential, and I just told him this before we got started, influential designers in music and film. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest today is Kenny. Kenny, how are you doing, sir? No problem. So it's just a fun question for you.
Okay.
What's the one movie poster or album you saw as a kid that you were like, who made this?
Oh, that's an easy one for me, because the poster I actually still have. I have it up at our studio actually, and it's the Alien 1979 Ridley Scott. Personally, that poster for me to this day actually it still is like one of the most iconic posters that have been made. And I recently did a talk and brought this up, and Stephen Frankfurt, who was the designer of that poster and designed many amazing posters like Rosemary's Baby, and Downhill Racer. But yeah, Alien poster's amazing and stood hands down for me. Like when I was young and I saw it, I was like, oh, dude, that's cool. That's before I even knew anything about it. Yeah.
Dope. So let's talk about a little bit of your background. You grew up in East London with Caribbean roots. How did that dual culture help shape your identity through this creative lens?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I talked about this recently the other day. So, in the 50s and 60s, there was a big sort of migration of a lot of Caribbean from the Caribbean, a lot of like people from St. Lucia and Jamaica and Trinidad, basically from all those Caribbean islands that came over to England. Some went to America, but a bunch came to England. And it was obviously it was like an immigrant situation, but there was quite a few of us. So it felt like two little worlds, which, most immigrants can connect to. It's sort of like there's the world of your parents and like cousins or friends that are connected. And then there's your sort of like other world, which is like, for me, it was England and like, my East London roots situation. So I had both of those worlds pretty much going on at the same time.
Okay, dope. So during my research, a little bit, I found out that you weren't the only creative person in the family. So, do you mind sharing about how stepping into your cousin's, you know, design studio with art boards and no computers yet, how did that shape you?
Yeah. So what happened was that, so in England, the difference is like you graduate high school at 16. So it's a little bit different from America. You go to 18 and you go into college. So in England, you graduate at 16. And at the time when I was growing up, for whatever reason, you could land a job in a bank. Like it was almost like a guaranteed, like the school bully missed 50% of classes, like have a job on the bank by the time we was done with high school. I don't know, but for whatever reason back then, there was some pipeline that the schools had with banks. And like it was like, trainee teller situation, like that was the job. And it was like it was a given. So that's where I was heading. So one day, my cousin, who I just recently saw, I was in London just last week, and I just recently saw him. He worked at, it was like a magazine design place. And like it was like a bunch of magazines they did. It was like one conglomerate group, it was a bunch of magazines. So I went with him to work, and this was obviously pre-computers. This was like in the 80s. And I saw just the whole energy and the vibe of the place. Because like everyone with drawing boards and they were like playing jokes and throwing stuff. And it was just like the whole vibe. I didn't know anything. I was just like, I just knew that he would be on this drawing board and he'd be, cutting out pictures. I knew nothing about the process. It was purely just the vibe of this. And all I knew is that I liked that way more than the idea of being like a bank teller.
Yeah.
So that was at the time I'm like 14. So that's all I can really define at that time. It isn't like, oh, why I want to do this. Well, it was just more of like an energy of like, oh, wanting to go into a job.
Yeah.
Like there's this vibe or there's like me with the tie teller, right? So I asked him, I was like, dude, how do I even get a job like this? And he was like, well, first up, you should try to go to art school. So I went to my art teacher and I was like, hey, I want to go to art school, and he told me the job. He was like, you want to be a graphic designer? I was like, I want to be a graphic designer. I want to go to art school. But then that's how we started working. And I needed to get a certain grade to like get into this art school. So I ended up, and that was it. That was started. So I ended up going to art school after high school instead of going to do the bank teller thing.
Right.
Yeah. So
So,
kind of how things started.
so just out of curiosity, did you have any pushback from the family? Because I know most traditional immigrant families. Yeah.
Thankfully, I'll just be, honest about this. Like my parents were divorced when I was young. So it was just me and my mom and my sister. And honestly, my mom wasn't as involved in my education as my sister. My sister's much older, like 9 years older. So she sort of took the role as sort of like what I'm doing education wise or whatever. And my mom was a little less sort of like, you know, to be honest, she was just like less involved. It was kind of like, she was being a single mom, single mom and stuff. So yeah, so really she didn't have too much to say. Like I didn't even know she really knew what was happening. I was just like, oh, I'm still doing school, basically. To this day, my mom barely knows what I do to her. It's perfectly honest.
So what gave you that courage to just be like, okay, was it, okay, I'm going the art school route, or was it
Mhm.
more of, I just don't want a boring job?
I think first, I just don't want a boring job.
Right.
Yeah, I think that was 14, 15, I just don't want a boring job. I
Mm.
think that's where it started. But when I got to art school, I think that it changed to like wanting to get a design job rather than just being in school. Cause there was like a chance to do 4 years of school and I took only to do two because I wanted to go out and work because I had seen my cousin too, which I also felt helped a lot. Yeah, versus just trying to do more and more school, more school.
Yeah.
It was kind of like I saw the realities of like working. So I had him help me with my portfolio to get it really professional. So that's kind of like why I think I was so pushed to like go actually work. So by the time I was 18, I left, I was done with, I finished my course, my 2 years, and it was like, okay, you want to continue on to do number two, or do you want to go off into the world? And I chose going off into the world, basically.
Okay. So I know through some more research that when you left and went into the world, you came to New York. Can you just explain how that first, I don't know, let's go 6 months was? You showed up with your portfolio, you were doing all these interviews, and you're talking to all these people, and then they're surprised you have this British accent. So how was that first 6 months?
It was crazy, man. It was
Yeah.
crazy. So I gotta give you gotta understand the picture. It's like 1987. So, bro, there's no Idris Elba yet. No, like it's the English black like reference point.
Heartthrobs or nothing.
And it's nothing. And so I didn't plan on staying in New York. My dad lived there. And I didn't just plan on being there for the summer. And it was like I was gonna because my dad lived in the Bronx and I wanted to like go around Manhattan. So that's why I actually brought my portfolio. Because I wanted to go for interviews, not really caring if I got a job, but just so I could actually learn Manhattan and just go around to different places. So that was sort of the point of me even bringing a portfolio in the first place.
Right.
But yeah, it was hysterical because this kind of thing happened. Like I would say, I'm not even exaggerating right now. I would say 90% of the time. Now back then, my accent was really strong.
Yeah.
Because like I was, East London, so I'd call up. I'd be, hello. I'm like, yeah, this is Kenny. Yeah, I'm calling from, it was like really strong. So I was just like, yeah, I'm wondering if I could come in, show my work, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And not a lot of times I'd get, oh, sure, like we'd love to meet you, blah, blah, blah. You're from London. Amazing, right? I get a lot of that. So when I show up, and again, I'm not exaggerating with them. I would show up, and don't forget, this is like back then, so big ass portfolio. Not like, I'm showing up with like a little laptop. This is a big portfolio I'm showing up with. The receptionist would tell me to take a seat, and then the person would come out whether it was man or woman, didn't matter. And they were just like, they looked at me, looked around, and like,
Yeah.
and they would look at the receptionist kind of like, and she would have to do either one of these or like one of these,
That's funny.
see happening. And then they would look at me direct and they would pause for a second and then be like, oh, hi. And then I'd be like, hello, how's it going? And then then they couldn't even hold it. They were just like, well, okay. Well, hi. It's like, yeah, it was just a crazy anomaly for them. They just did it, you know.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not being funny, but I think even nowadays, when American hears someone who looks Asian and speaks in a really English super accent, they're a little fro. You know what I'm saying? Like, even to this day, they're a little bit fro. I mean, it was like that times 10, you know? Like, yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. I actually have a student from London. I don't know what part. But when she first came in my class, I was like, wow, that is heavy. She was like, we just landed a few weeks ago and trying to find my footing. And I was just like, wow. And so, but she's a great artist. She's in my art one class. So she's very talented. She can draw. Yeah. So let's talk about those jobs. Looking back, you got fired from 4 jobs in 2 years. Oh, man. How did that shape you?
You know what is so interesting? I know, and every time I have a chat, I talk about this, and my PR people was like, "You have to mention it." I'm like, "Yeah, no, it's not. I don't have a problem mentioning it. I think that, New York definitely New York to me. You know what I'm saying? It's like 4 years, 2 years, 4 firings. Some of it, honestly, was number one. I think part of it was that the first place I was at I was there for a year, and I just sweet that I was doing like, I think you probably read this about me too. I was doing like I was doing like orange, what is it? Apple juice. Yeah, apple juice, and then Carefree Panty Shields.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of like, for instance, that Mott's apple juice I'll never forget because I remember picking Pantone colors for the background of the yellow. And it was just like, I mean, it was tough. Like, it was a job, right? It was like, yeah. But I'll never forget this. I'd done pretty much all the work I needed to do. And I asked the designer, I said, hey, can I help you with anything? And I thought there was going to be an opportunity there because I'd sort of done all the busy work I needed to do. I'd done errands. Because, I was like a junior. So I was doing everything from, pick
Coffee, the donuts. Yeah.
whatever. Right? And I said, is there something I could do? And she said, sure. And I was like, oh my God, she's going to give me something to design, like, logo.
Yeah.
And she's like, hey, it's not great, but I'd appreciate it. Can you rearrange my Prismacolor marker set? So,
Come on, people.
like, basically, it was like these Prismacolor markers. It was like a set of like 140 markers.
Oh, yeah.
They were just all like messed up, but there's like there's a way to put them in. So they follow this color chart. And basically, she wanted me to like organize these things. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I was just like, and I remember thinking to myself, you know what? When I get to this place where I'm like, art director and a junior asks me, can I help? I'm going to give them something better than this. Then like
100.
but I did. Like, the fact that was like 30 plus years ago, and I still remember it lets you know. Like, it stuck with me. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Never going to do that.
See you get
A
that.
young designer, I'm definitely going to need. Anyway, so they end up letting me go after a year. It's like very much one of those like, hey, we're having some cutbacks. So one of the things that I did with the second job, so I had told them my real age in the first job, right? And they were it was so funny because I'd gotten 2 job offers at the same time, right? And of the first company, 2 job offers at the same time. I told both job offers exactly my age. And they said to me, we're going to treat you like you're a college graduate here in the US because we think you're really mature for your age and blah, blah, blah. You're from London, all this. So one of them says to me, we're going to offer you, what we would offer a college grad, which was $12,000 a year. Now, for me, I had no concept of money, right? So I was just like, oh, okay, great. The same day, I got a call from the other place that I ended up working for the year. And they said, hey, here's the thing. We can't offer you much, but we can offer you $14,000 a year.
That's an easy pick right there.
Like, welcome to New York, because this company made it sound like they were just giving me the world, right?
Yeah.
This company was like, hey, we can't be much, obviously. Is it? I was 14. And I remember thinking, I was like, oh, yeah, no problem. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'll take it. Yeah. Anyway. And then, on top of that is another story that I haven't told. So when I did work there for a year, a young designer came in from, they graduated. And they were talking to me, and they told me about, I said, did you interview anywhere? I said, I interviewed so many places. I said, I even got offered a job. I forget the name of the company. I was like, well, you're there, and I took this one. And then the guy said to me, oh, yeah, they offered me a job too, but they only offered me 18. And I was just like, that was so cool to hear, right? Because I was just like,
It's a good welcome to New York right there.
right. So anyway,
Yeah.
I got let go. So then I was like, okay, my next job, I'm actually gonna, as I'm bullshitting. You know what I'm saying? I'm totally gonna bullshit. So I went in there. I'm 24. I did the English thing.
Whoa.
I did no. I'm not advocating this, by the way. I'm just saying what happened. I'm not saying for you guys, any juniors to like lie about age. Just where I was at in New York.
Yeah.
So I end up lying about my age. Dude, I get this job,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like for Jaquan Noir. It's actually like fragrances, like packaging for fragrances.
Yes. Yeah.
It's definitely cooler than my Mott's apple juice stuff. But here's the thing: get this job. Next thing you know, it's like it's on Fifth Avenue, right?
Oh wow.
I get my own office, and they give me like an American Express card. Well, anyway, I immediately started feeling under pressure. So I'd basically gotten a job that I really wasn't prepared for. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, basically finessed my way into this job that was not ready. That 2 months drowning, completely drowning. So it was Christmas time. And then people were getting bonuses, going into my boss of getting bonuses. So they called me in. And in my brain, I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like, I'm going to get a bonus. And I mean, I don't think I've been doing great, but man, this is,
Yeah.
I was just like, so I go in there, and my boss is there, her boss is there, and then some dude in a suit.
Oh no.
He's just like, Kenny, and literally said like this, is like, we're going to have to terminate you. I'm going to need your key card. I'm going to need your parking ranks. And I was like, whoa. And I was trying to like talk my way out of it. And he couldn't even save me. It was, so that was like 2 months, bro. I was just like,
Wow.
yeah, it was a lot.
So when did you realize, you know what? I gotta go the music and film route. When did that hit you?
Bro, after my full firing, and that one, just so you know, was even more classic because I've gotten a headhunter to get me the job.
Uh-huh.
And this is like before cell phones. And I was there like a week, bro, maybe like 2 weeks tops. And I heard the owner on the phone, I kid you not. And I heard him say, well, we don't want it, right? And I was like, so I remember getting home that night. I called up my spread. That's why it's really important to have like close, good friends out on you. I said, yo, T, dude, I heard the owner saying we don't want him anymore. You think that he was talking about me? And my friend was like, he's absolutely
talking about you. Yeah.
I was like, so anyway, and sure enough, in the morning, my head down to call me and like, Kenny, so yeah, we're not gonna have you go in anymore on that one. So dude, so I went with my friend. We were unemployed. We were both unemployed, so it was kind of like we had that like sort of connection. So we ended up playing a lot of pool. Remember this in the Bronx for maybe 4 months. So this was after my last firing, and like my dad was like, "Hey, are you sure you want to do this design thing?" Yeah, I was like, "Yeah, I do, but I don't know." So anyway, it was one of those things. So there was this thing, I don't know if you remember this, but there was this program called Columbia House. You could get all these CDs.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. You can get 24 album for well said. Yeah,
Names, you just more.
yes, I did that. School. I did it.
Everybody did it. Everybody did it.
Oh man.
So I was doing that, right? So I loved it
Yes.
so much. I was doing that. And then one day I was just kind of like, I would look to, there was two CDs specifically I always remember. So Give Me the Reason by Luther Vandross. But I looked at that. I looked at that cover and I turned around and I saw Sony, no, not Sony, I saw Columbia at the time. There wasn't Sony yet. So it was Columbia Records.
Yeah.
It's 50, I'll never forget, 50 West 52nd Street. I was like, oh, I know where that is, right? So I've called up, I found the number. I called up and again, guess what? I get an interview.
Oh wow.
So again, the accent helping. So I go and I have a meeting with Columbia Records. And I go and I meet this guy. And then, do you remember Sprockets from Saturday Night Live? Like, it was like, I think Mike Myers was the character. Yeah.
Yes.
All like, the Black Panther. He was like this artsy, this was the guy that I was meeting. He was like a Sprockets kind of character.
Wow.
And I was like, so all I had in my portfolio, of course, was, Mott's apple juice, basically.
Yeah.
Like Carefree Panty Shields and, just bad package design pretty much. So I'm showing him the work and he's like looking at the work. And all of a sudden, again, no computers yet. You get a piece of art comes in. It's a real piece of art. He's like painted piece.
Yeah.
And like it comes on his desk. The assistant drops it off. He's looking at the art. So then he goes back to my work and he starts flipping. And then I notice he's looking at the art again and he's just flipping he's dumb. Oh yeah. I was just like, oh dude. So he looks at me like he always knew I was looking, like he saw I was seeing him flip and not look. He just turned and looks at me and he says, we designed album covers here, right? And I was like, yeah. I was like, that's why I'm here. And he's like, yeah, but there's nothing in here that
Your
shows
portfolio.
yeah. And I was like, well, how am I? He's like, I'll tell you what, do me a favor. This is the advice that changed my life. He's like, go off, design me some album covers. Just albums that you like, design the covers, and then come back and see me.
Okay.
And so that 2 weeks of me doing that was where like my whole trajectory changed. But not like in the way you'd expect. So, of course, because there always has to be challenges.
Right.
When I was done with the portfolio, first of all, I was so excited. It was the first time I've been excited about working. Just for those, and it was just me, myself. Like, and I was basing it off like groups that I liked. So from London, it was like Simply Red, Finding and Cannibals, like Elton John. It was all people that I grew up with, and I was just making album covers for them. So I couldn't get another meet with the guy. He's in Japan. He was whatever. I could not get another meet with. I was so gutted. And then one day I was looking and I saw Fear of Black Planet, Public Enemy album. And I turned and I saw Def Jam Records, but I saw they were distributed by Columbia. So I was like, oh, maybe if I call this place, I can get connected back to him. Columbia.
Oh, wow.
So then I called Def Jam and I got a meeting there. So I go there, right? So I have my regular Mott's apple juice thing, but then I also brought my new little portfolio of album covers. So my goal was to meet whoever was there and say, did they know Sprocket? So I could go to meet with Sprockets.
Got you.
So when I get to Def Jam, this guy with dread looks at me and says, oh, just put the portfolio down. I said, no, you said you were going to meet with me. He's like, he looked at me, he's like, okay. He's like, come on.
Well, yeah.
You know who that was. So I end up showing him, I'm like 20. I end up showing him the Mott's apple juice first because that's,
The professional. Yeah.
right? And he looks at it. He's like, all right, great, thanks. He's like, okay, thanks for coming. Like, he's pushing me out the door. I was like, wait. I was like, wait, I have this too. And I showed him the covers I made. And that is what ended up getting me the job at Def Jam.
How many covers did you do?
It was like 5.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just 5 covers, Talking Heads, Simply Red, Fighting Cannibals, Elton John. I forget what that one was. But that was what ended up getting me the job. Now, what was really deep about the whole thing was, remember I told you that they were distributed by Columbia.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'd been at Def Jam for maybe 2 months, and they were like, Kenny, we need you to go over to Columbia with these mechanicals and drop them off to Columbia because they were going to take over the production part. So I end up going to the same building at Columbia, and I see Homeboy's office.
Yeah.
And I'm like, do I just go and drop these off like I'm supposed to?
Or just show my face.
Leave it? I couldn't help it. I just popped my head in. And I was just like, hey, for some reason, you remember my last name. He was like, Gravillis. I said, hey, man. I was like, kind of like, what are you doing there? I said, you can't believe this. You actually got me a job. And he's like, well, I was like, you got me a job at Def Jam from the work you told me to do. I couldn't get to see you, but, and he was just, he actually looked really pleased. He was like, that's
good.
and he was kind of like, well played, like he was super happy about it. So yeah, man, that was sort of the scoop. And so then I ended up working at Def Jam, and I was there for like 5 years. And then to really wrap up the story, I ended up getting offered a job from Columbia, from Sprockets, but I ended up not taking it, starting at MCA as VP. So, oh no, it's, yeah, he's full circles. That story's always like means a lot to me just because it was like such a, journey.
Yeah. So what was the first like real project that made you feel like, oh, I've arrived?
It's interesting. I feel like, okay, so when I was at Def Jam, you know, I started doing my own projects, and I felt like I'd done this Terminator X album that I just really liked at the time. And it wasn't so much that I arrived, it was like something that I just felt like I'd done from start to finish by myself. So I guess maybe that's where I started to feel like I had arrived, when I'd actually done something where it felt like, okay, I felt really confident in doing something from the beginning all the way to the end, in terms of designing all the liner notes and all, all that stuff, as well as the cassette, the CD, and I just felt like I'd done all of it myself. So that was one of them. It was cool. Terminator X Value the Beat. And then, of course, just as we started to do more, and of course, everyone knows that, a lot of people know that I designed Notorious Big Ways to Die album cover. And the thing about that cover, what was deep, is that it was my first album on the computer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. So it was my very first album on the computer. I'd never done, and that's why if you look at the back of that album, the type is terrible because I was like stretching tight. I was just like,
Trying to take up that space.
yeah, I was just like, oh wow, you could do this. You could. It was just like, oh, that's why the goodness. So the back cover of that album, the type is all stretched and crazy, or the bad. Like, that was just should be like figuring out Photoshop and Quark Express, and like, wow, you could do this. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
That's crazy. That was my first album I ever purchased. Well, my brother purchased it. That was my very first one with the baby on the cover. That was my very first one. So before we jump from Def Jam, how was it working under Say Adams? We both have had conversations about this. So yeah.
Honestly, it was the beautiful thing about Def Jam. Well, so the deal, so say he had a partner called Steve Carr, and they had this company called The Drawing Board. And what was deep about The Drawing Board, it was that technically it was its own company, but it lived inside of Def Jam. And it's like, oh, I mean, you can't get that deal anywhere. So basically, Say knew Russell, and Russell basically set up this deal for him where he was like, listen, like, kind of like they were like the main client, right? That it was almost kind of like, okay, we're going to give you money per quarter to run your business. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Doing that, you're going to take care of all our artists.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was very like interesting deal. And then what ended up really working out was that, because of relationships with Uptown and Bad Boy, Def Jam were like, you can do work for those guys too.
Oh, wow.
So that's how we ended up working on Biggie and, Ebony was,
Yeah.
that and Mary. We could do it because Def Jam allowed us to do that. And so because of the relationship that all the owners had. So it was kind of just really interesting. Yeah. So yeah, we were just like, we were loving it, man. And I think what was awesome about it, I was like their second hire, in terms of for Drawing Board period. So I just got really close to those guys. I mean, those guys were at my wedding. Those guys are like, known these guys like 30 years. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
you know, and we've stayed friends. And it's part of that, I think, was like how tight that group was. I mean, one thing that I learned about Def Jam was just like the beautiful thing about Def Jam, especially at that time, was that this was like a team of people, and it wasn't a huge team back then, but that was so authentic in what they were making. And it wasn't really about, oh, we're trying to sell this to everyone. It was like, no, we're trying to be authentic in who we are.
Yes. Yes.
That I feel like that was the shift, you know, in terms of hip hop. You know, like that was the shift. It wasn't like, oh, we're trying to like, you know, sort of sell you this. It's like, no, we're this is who we are. And it's sort of like take it or leave it kind of situation. You know what I'm saying?
Very much. Very much.
Completely responded to it. People responded to that like authenticity and that realness and that just kind of like the rawness of like, oh, you know, this is a real thing that we're feeling. We're in the air, feel, you know, marketed type. So I feel like that was the beauty of looking at Def Jam and those relationships, like, you know, really thick. I mean, I'll never forget, like 15 years after I worked at Def Jam, me and Steve, who's the other partner of Drawing Board, we're both in LA. And Steve literally tells me, he's like, yo, guess what? Chuck D is doing a book signing at the Grove in Los Angeles. And we're both living in LA at the time. And we should totally go up to this book signing. I haven't seen Chuck for like 10, 12 years, at least, maybe even 15. So we both go to this book signing at the Grove. And we're online waiting, and we see Chuck signing books. And then all of a sudden he sees us and he gets up. We're on the book signing.
Yeah.
And comes to us. It's like, these are the real cops. So, we're so embarrassed. We're like, oh, you know, but that just shows you the connect of that time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's dope.
It was such a incredible, I didn't understand sort of like what I was even in at the time. You know what I mean? Like I didn't even, which is probably good, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about this pivoting point. We're going from hip hop album covers. Now you're going into movie marketing. So what was something that might have been difficult for that transition? Because I know it's design, but I know it's not your regular design.
Yeah, we were so naive. Like, so at the time we had started Gravillis in 2000. You know, I'd already done did Def Jam, I did MCA. So it was like 10 years of album stuff. Nice Gravillis, 2000. And all we did for like the first 4 years of Gravillis was album covers. You know what I'm saying? Like everyone, we're doing Santana, we're doing, you know, whoever, like Common, The Roots, whoever. We're doing all this stuff. And we're kind of feeling ourselves in that. We're like, oh, this is the world. So then music started kind of going downhill in like 2003, 2004. You know, the whole iPod and
Napster and all that stuff. Yeah.
So things started going downhill. So it was like, man, we got to pivot, you know, like, you know, we're not getting the money we need. Like, it's just like, this isn't going great right now. So we got to figure something out. So we thought, because we were so sort of like seasoned and, you know, respected on the music side, we thought that was just going to translate. Like, we were like, you know, hey, Hollywood, you know what I'm saying? Like, here's all cool music stuff. And then, well, these guys are like, okay, it's a square.
Yeah.
Very much. I couldn't even translate, like,
Right.
being horizontal. They were just like, oh. We were like, oh, shit, we are in trouble right now. Yeah, it was a mess, dude. Like, we were just like, oh, man. Yeah, it was just door slam. Like, it was like, oh, and we got a lot of this. Oh, so you guys are really urban. Cool. You know? And it was just like, oh my God, these executives. There's a whole different thing, like different executive, different world from like execs. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
we just weren't part of it. We just didn't know. Like, we just like, yikes, bro. Yeah, so yeah, it was some dark days. Like, we were cooling. It was like nothing was happening. When we finally did get a meeting, it was like they just didn't get it. It was like looking at album covers, they could not translate.
Got it.
Yeah.
So how did you break in and earn the trust of that? Like, that's a huge world to get into.
Yeah.
So how did you break in and earn that trust of those executives to be like, hey.
It's really tricky. I tell you our big break. So our very first poster actually was a music doc, which actually made a lot of sense, right? It's like, so we didn't do that. It was a Jay-Z's Fade to Black, actually. So that's our very first poster we did for Paramount, Vantage, or whatever they were at the time. So that was our first documentary. And even that, I was happy about it. But I was like, but look, we're still the music urban guys.
Yeah.
Like I just felt like we kind of felt screwed in that because we're like, oh my God, they're like, what are we going to do? Because we know that they're not going to see us as anything else. And even that we did this Jay-Z poster now, still music, it's a documentary and it's music.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like, what are we going to, Anyway, so my partner at the time, she had a meeting at Miramax and we showed them our work. And they were the first, and I know saying Weinstein's right now is like saying Voldemort. But, they were the first people that looked at our work and were like, you guys might do something interesting. You might do something different. So I'll never forget it. We worked on this black comedy called Daltrey Calhoun with Johnny Knoxville. I'll never forget it because, number one, there was no black people in it. So we were super happy,
Yeah.
Like, it was just like this comedy, kind of black comedy, dark comedy, Johnny Knoxville. And so we did a bunch of work for him. So the way the story goes, because we wasn't there for what went down, but the way the story went was that they were showing Harvey a bunch of ideas for this movie.
Okay.
And he hated everything. And he was like throwing boards, like he hated it. So then they said, oh, wait, we've got one more set. And they brought out our stuff. And they gave him our work. And he looked at it. Now, there were like boards, imagine like gator boards where the things were wrong. Now, at the back of the board, you'd put your sticker of your agency with the number of the comps. So, like, comp 1, Gravillis.
Yeah.
So he looked at it. He looked at this comp and then he turned the board around and he looked at the sticker at the bottom and he said, who's Gravillis? Like, and that's how it started,
Yes, sir.
So once they were like, okay, Harvey likes your stuff. And, because Harvey liked that one poster, they were going to give us more opportunities. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
But what ended up happening, we ended up starting doing a bunch of work for Miramax and Weinstein's. And what happened, we started doing a bunch of work and we became the indie kids. They're so much better than being the black kids.
Got you.
So just what ended up happening is Weinstein, there was like nobody black in anything there. So we were just doing all independent film.
Yeah.
And that ended up happening. What ended up happening with independent film ended up growing. And like all of a sudden you had like, oh, who's directing, 500 Days of Summer? We're going to have them direct Spider-Man or like, Brad Pitt in Snatch. Like all of a sudden independent film started to like rise.
Shift.
We kind of just shifted with it. So all of a sudden it was like, well, who's doing that cool poster? They can do this bigger film. Let them try that. So that's how our transition went.
So this one I'm kind of curious about. That shift from being the black kids that only do urban work to now you're in this design element of large movies from indie to Hollywood blockbusters.
Yeah.
So you once said that like you don't want to be locked in as a black designer. So how do you navigate that?
Yeah. So what I meant by that was, what the sort of blessing that we had with independent film was that our work was being judged on like our design. And it was, and like just the coolness of our work and like what we were communicating. And it wasn't judged on like, oh, we need to get we need to get a black company because it's a black film. So it wasn't shows that because the reality was it wasn't like our white counterparts ever had to deal with that. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't, what I'm saying? It wasn't like, oh, because there's white people in this, we need to get this agency. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't, that's never the case. So, and I remember specifically, there was a couple of agencies that were very much like that were black owned at the time. They're no longer around, but, and that could also be part of it, right? It's like, but that was their only focus. And it's like, well, how much, black content, no offense, back then was there anyway? You know what I'm saying? So unless you were like doing all of it, like how is that even going to be a sustainable business model, right? So for us, we knew that. So we were always more interested. We made sure in the beginning, we made sure we stayed away from anything that felt overly black because we knew Hollywood was so into the idea of like pigeonholing.
Yeah.
And they can't even help it. It's just like, it's also just a genre thing for them. It's kind of like this idea of like genre. Oh, that company's really great with actions, or that company's really great with comedies. Yeah. So industry itself is already like that. It's going to be put the black card in there, then it just doubles down basically, right?
Got it.
Yeah.
So how does it feel to still be one of like the few black owned agencies in entertainment design now?
Yeah. I think right now it's a little different because I think now we're more of a representation that we can now feel like there's a responsibility, I feel like, for us now to like bring more in, if that makes sense. Do you know what I'm saying? Because you were able to get to a place where I remember 2009 specifically, we had worked on like Avatar, Glorious Bastards, and like Alvin and the Chipmunks. It was kind of like, okay, we can't get pigeonholed. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
we're at a place, we're at a different spot now. So now when we work on Straight Outta Compton, whatever, like it's cool because now we can try to represent our culture,
Right.
not just be like, oh, that's all we're going to be able to do. Do you know?
Yes.
So we got to that place of where now we can speak up for our culture and try to do work that, speaks to our culture without having to sacrifice that, oh, we can't do our base. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, to work on I'm Like Your Negro, we also can work on Do. You know what I'm saying? But we're in that place where we can do that. So now for us, now it becomes like, well, how do we get more people that look like us into that position? You know what I mean? Like, they're not just the only people here, because we'll see that doesn't make sense either.
Got you. Okay, that does make sense because I was curious about that, but I think you clearly explained how like pigeonholing is hard to get out of too. It's a fight.
So hard, and it's like, and I hate to say it, but this is a very small industry. It's like a cottage industry, there's like 15 companies maybe that do 90% of the work. Do you know what I'm saying? And it's like, yeah, people don't realize, but it's like, it's so small. So once you're like pigeonholed, you're kind of done. It's hard until like a new round. And I think what did help, obviously, is streamers and all those people coming, that was like a new crop of executives that didn't come from old school studios. So that definitely helped, right? But before, you had like the 5 studios and that was it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. So now we're going to talk about probably the fun part of it all. Can you walk us through the campaign process for one of your films? So I got 3 of them. You can choose which one comes to mind quicker. The Blackkklansman, If Bill Street Could Talk, or Sinners.
Yeah.
You pick which one, and if you could walk us through that process.
Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna pick Blackkklansman.
Okay.
Just because, we haven't, so no one has supported us as much as Spike Lee. Like, in regards to like someone of real power that doesn't have to do it really. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
That is truly choosing to make an effort to support us, And I think, so I met Spike in 2015 and we worked on his project Chirac. That was the first project that we worked on with him.
Yeah.
So, I definitely consider him a mentor. Blackkklansman, so usually what happens is like, he'll send me the script, or usually actually a studio will send the script and he usually says, oh, don't read that one. I have an update one. I'll send it to you. Read this one instead. So anyway, we read the script, and a lot of times it really becomes a one-on-one with him, in terms of when we come up with, this is something that a lot of studios that deal with Spike know. And again, this goes back to being incredibly supportive. They know that we work with him directly.
Got you. Yeah.
So, but because they know who we are, I think it's a little less intimidating. And like, because we try to make sure we're including the studio.
Got it.
In our conversations that we have with him. We're having that. Does that make sense? Yeah. So we tried really good partners to our studio people that are dealing with a Spike project, because we realize, we're in a very unique position. You know what I'm saying? Where usually the way it works is the studio is dealing with the filmmaker, the studio is giving us the feedback, we're giving the studio work, they're throwing up their chain, and then it goes to the filmmaker. So this kind of cuts a lot of that stuff out.
He tells you directly what he likes.
Deal for the studio unless you have a partner that you can really be great and communicate with. So we really try hard to make sure we're that for the studio, because obviously we need to do more work with them. That isn't a Spike job, right? So we want to make sure that we're as like malleable and with their needs as well, right? So that's just the position that we're in with Spike. And, but like I said, he's very, very supportive. And what was, I'll share a story about Blackkklansman. So we came up with ideas, we showed him the ideas right away. Basically, it was like a sketch, sketching for the photo shoot, basically. So it's like, imagine like a bunch of sketches. I'm showing him like, hey, and he's going through them with me. And then he right away picked the one where we have John David wearing the Klan hat. Like, right,
Yeah.
that's it. He's very like definitive, actually. When he likes something, he's very clear on it. Do you know what I'm saying? Like there's no up and down with him. He's very like, if he likes something, he's like, that's it right there.
Yeah.
So what was interesting about that project? So, we showed the studio. They're like, Spike loves the Klan hood on John David. So then it came time for photography. Now, I know Spike is very much into people of color working on this project. So I got 4 photographers. They were all male, by the way, but I had worked with them. They were all Black photographers that I had worked with. I was very comfortable with them. And I showed them to Spike. And he looked at them and he sent me back this other photographer, a female photographer. And he sent it back. And he's like, what about this person? And I looked at her work. And I don't know, she hadn't shot any movie poster stuff at all.
Okay.
And then she had like sort of a lot of documentary. She actually taught photography in Chicago. And also she had a lot of documentary, like minors in Belgium or something like that. It just didn't seem to fit, right? And I was kind of like, I'm not going to lie. I was sort of like, okay, Spike. I was kind of like, all right.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Anyway, when it came time for the shoot again, and focus features was like, Kenny, we need to make a decision on photographer. I sent Spike the same 4 photographers, right? So then he says back to me, what's up with Latoya? And I was like, Spike. And this one I tried to explain myself. I was like, Spike, she's never shot anything. I mean, she's never done a poster before. Like, it's Belgium, Black. And then, oh my God, why'd I say that? Dude, he let me have it.
I can already picture it.
He was like, Ken, you know what? He's like, you know what? He's like, guess what? We are using her. And guess what else? It's on you now. It is about you I am looking at you to make sure that this shoot is successful. I was like, and he's like, you know what, Kenny? He's like, if it's not us, how is she ever going to get opportunity? If it's not us, who's going to do it? So it's just like, if it's not us, then who? And then I just shift my whole thing. I was like, okay, let's get her the right lighting. And it was all about supporting this woman during the shoot.
Yeah.
And she did an amazing job, of course, right? And she didn't even really want to do movie posters. But the point here was like, how can we actually not just give people opportunities, but support them in trying to do well?
Right.
Support them to succeed.
Right.
It's not just enough to give an opportunity, but it's like, I need to make sure that I am supporting you to succeed in that opportunity.
Right.
So it was really just a pivotal time for me personally. And it also showed me the power of having someone like Spike,
in your corner.
In your corner. That's saying, and for me, it was like, okay, if I get in that position of where I have influence, I want to make sure I really use it.
Yeah. So you keep up. I mean, you design so much for each project. So how do you keep it fresh and authentic? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, honestly, I think that's always the goal. That's always the push, and it's interesting. I don't know. I'm glad you say that. I mean, for us, it feels sometimes like we're not, but I think we are always trying to like push ourselves, and I think that we're always trying to find like the good thing about, I guess, our agency specifically
Mhm.
is that we kind of get called to do things that are a little bit left to center. So it doesn't like in a way, it like that's sort of our whole MO is to like push it and do something different. Does that make sense? You know,
Yeah.
we're not like, a lot of times it's probably to work on that. They won't go with our stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like they won't go with sort of what the work that we've done just because maybe it doesn't quite hit. It's too far off. But it never really stopped us from keeping on doing that. Because regardless of whether or not they end up using our poster or not, I think for us, it's about the idea of the type of work that we're doing. Because that's what kind of also gets us hired again, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like we're always pushing it. And one of the biggest things that I always tell our designers is that it isn't about the final poster. I mean, I know a lot of people, I know it is about a final poster, but we try to have the mentality of it isn't about the final poster because a lot of times the final poster is kind of like this conglomerate of like many things, it's like
Yeah.
approvals, this person, that person, this person. I try to concentrate on us doing interesting work and like wherever that lands, that lands. Like it might land all on the cutting room floor, as they say, or you get, fortunate and you get like a Defy Blood situation where you get away with something super great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I always remember we did, going back to 2009, we did this Alvin and the Chipmunk poster. And everyone kind of knows what Alvin Chipmunk poster looks like. It's going to be like, oh, it's going to be fur. It's going to be colorful. It's kids, blah, 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 blah. And we did this poster where it was one of my favorite posters that we did because it was black, this black light outline of Alvin, just like these little dots of light. And there's like, so it was on black. And it was kind of like, there's no business really this poster making it. But
Yeah.
we made the poster and we sent it in and it ended up getting used. And it's sort of like, for us, that was the first example for me of saying, oh, we actually have like a place here in this industry. You know, we've been in it for a few years, getting away with something like that, even if it takes every 50 posters, is worth it. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
so yeah.
That's crazy. That's good though, taking those little risks.
Yeah.
So,
So
so how do you stay hungry then? What keeps you just like, because I know you said seeing your work up on a billboard doesn't get old. So what keeps you hungry in 20 years in the game?
now what's interesting, I think that I feel like representing and ushering in just a new era of designers, especially designs of color, to be honest, into our industry. And like that kind of keeps me hungry. Like I want the agency to succeed and grow to usher that in, if that makes sense,
Gotcha. Yes.
So there's a little bit of a legacy thing in there too right now as well for us, I think. We've been, it's gonna be 25 years this year. So it's like,
Wow.
we have
Man, that's a blessing right there. That's
no,
amazing.
exactly. It's really, it's an amazing thing. So
Yes. So, Kenny, before we get off here, I have a few more questions, but we're going to have a little fun real quick. All right. So, this one right here is the one font you would ban forever.
Courier.
Courier.
Yeah.
Album or movie you wish you had designed for.
Moonlight.
Moonlight. Best design work, New York or LA?
New York, probably.
Yes. Well, Kenny, thank you for being with us. Just one last question.
Okay.
How do you hope your work and your company helps reshape who gets to define culture through design?
Well, what I would say a little bit what I said before, I would say what I'm hoping for, one thing I'm really proud of is that we have two design teams at Gravillis, and so they're like 7 designers each, so like 14 total, and 9 of those 14 have been interns at Gravillis. So I'm super proud and about our ability to sort of usher young talent and grow it. So that's sort of my hope is that we can do that. We can continue to do that, and we can continue to like raise designers that sort of, push our industry forward and like make us take more chances. It's one of the things that I love to sort of tell our designers is like, make me uncomfortable, man. Like push me, and then which I hope we can do for the future.
Yes. Any last jewels you would tell a designer that's just getting out of design school right now?
Design for what you want. Like make the work that you want to get. That's how I was like.
Dope. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to our podcast. My name is Justin Robinson. I have the master, the GOAT, Kenny Gravillis on our podcast today. And this is the Art School Graduate Podcast. We'll catch y'all later. Peace.
Peace.